The third objective we set out to do is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. That requires deradicalization. That's a difficult word, but it means re-education. It means a change. It's been done in other parts of the world.
Strong words from the guy who facilitated the funding of Hamas, but nonetheless, as Israel continues to carry out the mass slaughter of the Palestinian people in an effort to steal their land in both Gaza and the West Bank, of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declares that Palestinians need to be de-radicalized and re-educated. Maybe Israelis should, take their own advice, especially when we learn about the intentional killings of aid workers that took place in March of last year in Gaza specifically. So I want to give you a warning. This story is horrific. It's hard to even accept the fact that evil like this exists, but it does. And you should know about it because this is our ally. These are our special allies, okay? So Israeli soldiers ambushed and massacred 15 Palestinian aid workers, rescue workers in southern Gaza. This again took place in March of last year. And this is according to a new investigation that was carried out. 8 of the aid workers, by the way, were actually shot at point blank range. There was absolutely no confusion about who these victims were. There was no indication that they were Hamas terrorists or anything like that. So let's go through the story, buckle up. It all began with an Israeli airstrike that took place in Gaza near the Rafah border on March 23rd. Now, around 3:52 a.m., the Palestinian Red Crescent dispatched 2 ambulances from 2 different areas to respond to the airstrike. Obviously, you're gonna have some people who are hurt, maybe killed. Oftentimes there are civilians involved. More civilians get killed as a result of Israel's military campaigns than the intended targets. But nonetheless, one rescue vehicle arrived a little before the other. Now, the first ambulance had its emergency lights turned on. And as soon as they showed up to the scene, they were attacked by Israeli fire. So Mustafa Kafaja, who was driving, lost control of the vehicle, probably after getting shot, which veered left off the road and stopped near an electricity pole. So at that point, Kafaja and his colleague, Ez Eldin Shat, who was in the passenger seat, were both killed. So like the absolute scumbag cowards they've proven themselves to be, the IDF soldiers were positioned on an elevated sandbank by the road with no obstructions limiting their line of sight. So they've got an easy shot. They see the ambulance workers, boom, we're gonna shoot them immediately, okay? So again, they knew who they were targeting. Now, a third Palestinian Red Crescent worker, okay, Munther Abed, who was in the back of the vehicle, threw himself to the floor of the van and survived. After the shooting stopped, Israeli soldiers approached the ambulance and dragged him out of the car, beat him, and detained him at a nearby pit. Now, sometime later, 2 Palestinian civilians, a father and a son, were also detained and brought to that same pit, okay? At this point, the second ambulance shows up to the scene looking for the first ambulance. This is around 4:35 a.m. And they had lost communication with the first ambulance at 3:55 a.m. They arrived to the scene at 4:35 a.m. Now, in total, a 5-vehicle rescue convoy arrived at the scene of this attack, of the first ambulance. And by 5 a.m., all 5 of those emergency vehicles are there on the scene. Now, a Palestinian Red Crescent worker in one of the ambulances, guy by the name of Rifat Radwan, began filming on his phone as they drove to the site. His recovered videos, as well as recordings of phone calls by 2 other aid workers at the scene to the Palestinian Red Crescent dispatch, provided crucial evidence of the massacre. So this investigation they were able to do this investigation relying on witness testimony, videos, satellite imagery. There was a lot of evidence to kind of piece together what occurred here. And Rafat's video ended up being critical for the evidence. Now, Abed, who was detained at gunpoint on the elevated sandbank, testified that the soldiers were kneeling and aiming their weapons at that convoy as it approached, right? That convoy of 5 vehicles. The IDF soldiers later walked toward the aid workers, and here's what happened next. Upon reaching the vehicles, the Israeli soldiers continued to fire as they walked between the ambulances and the fire truck, shooting the aid workers at close range in execution-style killings. According to autopsy reports first reported by The Guardian, the aid worker who filmed the video, Radwan, was shot in the head. So do you guys remember all the stories we covered where you'd hear testimony from international doctors, American doctors who risked their lives and volunteered their time to help save people in Gaza? And they kept sharing the same story, that they kept seeing toddlers in the hospital with gunshot wounds to their heads and chests. I never denied that that was real, but now that we're reading about this investigation, do you deny? Does anyone deny that that was real? Why would American doctors lie to us? They shot toddlers in the head. In this case, they literally shot rescue workers in the head. And you shouldn't be surprised. We have other instances, other case studies that we can turn to for evidence. Remember that double tap on the hospital? So the Israelis do a strike on a hospital in Gaza. Rescue workers show up on the scene. And as soon as the rescue workers are there, they do another strike to kill the rescue workers. These are the people who tell us that we need to go to war with Iran because Iran is so dangerous. So by the end of the massacre, Israel killed 8 aid workers with the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, 6 from Palestinian Civil Defense, and a UN relief agency staffer. The massacre has been investigated by the independent research groups Earshot and Forensic Architecture. Dropsite News wrote extensively about their investigation, so you can check out their reporting on this. The report, again, provided a minute by minute account of how the killings were carried out. And in order to conduct the investigation, Earshot and Forensic Architecture relied on open source information, images, videos, satellite imagery, social media posts, as well as in-depth interviews with 2 of the survivors of the attack. Only 2 of the people that were targeted by the IDF survived in this case. Here's what else their investigation found. Israeli soldiers ambushed the Palestinian aid workers and subjected them to a near continuous assault for over 2 hours. The soldiers, by the way, never came under fire, which should be obvious. These people who were targeted were rescue workers. They're not armed militants. They didn't come for the IDF soldiers. They came to help civilians who might have been harmed as a result of the Israeli airstrike. At least 910 gunshots were documented across 3 video and audio recordings of the attack. The vast majority of these gunshots, at least 844, were fired over just 5 minutes and 30 seconds. At least 93% of the gunshots recorded in the first minutes of the attack were fired directly towards the emergency vehicles and aid workers by Israeli soldiers. During this time, at least 5 shooters fired simultaneously. Witness testimonies suggest as many as 30 soldiers were present in the area. Can we just quickly acknowledge how unbelievably gross and cowardly it is to just execute like unarmed aid workers and rescue workers? Like, do they feel good about themselves? Do these people think that they're good people? They do. That's the amazing thing. They think they're the righteous, moral ones as they're killing innocent people who are showing up to the scene to help people in need. And I'm supposed to believe that it's the Palestinians that need to be re-educated. I'm supposed to believe that it's the Palestinians who are taught, like they get a formal education in hating the Israelis. Why don't we check in on the type of education Israeli children are getting? Because I guarantee you they're not being taught love toward the Palestinian people. In the immediate aftermath of this attack, the Israeli military conducted extensive earthworks at the site. So in the days and weeks that followed, the area was further transformed by the Israeli military's construction of the Morag corridor, a secure, I'm not even gonna refer to it as a security zone, what a joke. It's a zone splitting the southern Gaza Strip, and the erection of an aid distribution site operated by the Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is well known for shooting at desperate and starving Palestinians as they waited in line for humanitarian aid. The Israeli military was forced to change its story about this ambush repeatedly because more and more evidence kept popping up showing that they intentionally targeted these innocent people, these aid workers. And they threw the aid workers' bodies in a mass grave. Their flattened vehicles were found, and audio recordings of the very aid workers that the IDF slaughtered were also found. And all of that was used to piece together evidence of what actually occurred that day. Yet, an internal military inquiry ultimately did not recommend any criminal action against the army units responsible for the incident, which I'm past anger when it comes to reading stuff like that, because after seeing the video of the Palestinian hostage getting gang raped by IDF soldiers, it was on video. After seeing the Israeli society's response to that, which is you better not punish them. You better not punish them. After seeing how those individuals were celebrated as if they're heroes, I don't put anything past Israelis. Sorry. You're showing the entire world who you are and what you're made of. And then you get mad at people for just plainly stating who you are and what you're made of. You could prove otherwise, but I haven't seen it yet. So when Dropsite News reached out to the Israeli officials for comment, they ignored specific questions, also unsurprising. But they pointed to the findings of an international investigation that was published about a month later on April 20th. The incident occurred in a hostile and dangerous combat zone. Yeah, no kidding, Israelis were there. Under a widespread threat to the operating troops. So we're supposed to believe that it was a dangerous zone for the heavily armed IDF soldiers. Right, okay. There's nothing more dangerous than rescue workers in their ambulances, right? It also found no evidence to support claims of execution, which it called blood libels and false accusations against IDF soldiers. Yes, of course. It's blood libel to accurately describe what Israeli soldiers do to innocent aid workers in Gaza on a daily basis, right? It's a blood libel. And if that's what's considered a blood libel, then I hope more people commit blood libel, meaning they're telling the truth about what Israel's up to. When you start tacking on those types of words and phrases to things that people find deplorable, killing innocent people, we find that deplorable. Then people are gonna think, oh, I guess blood libel is a good thing then, because it means you're telling the truth. So maybe stop doing that, but they can't help themselves. So while Netanyahu would have you believe that it is the Palestinians who are vicious animals who need to be de-radicalized, I think the radicals right now are the ones who are trying to drag the United States into yet another Middle Eastern war. I think the radicals are the ones who claim ownership to an entire freaking continent for their own. I think they're the radicals. The ones who have a cultish belief in religious doctrine, or at least they pretend to, in order to justify endless slaughter and land theft. And that's the Israeli government. So they don't like it when you talk about them like this. But when you show the whole world who you are, I choose to believe you.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.